Probably the best coffee in the region here in White River, and we're gonna drink some of that this morning.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah.
Thinking of you.
Sweet life, that's right. I'm on late night. Sweet life, that's right. Wake up in a dream like sweet life.
Okay, so once again, welcome back to my first vlog since or after the off season, whatever you like to call it, and I like to just call it day 19 and 11 to go. Today I'm going to talk about the most important component on a bicycle, and that's your saddle. I'm going to go through a few here that I'm going to try out over this base period from Sella Italia. I'm just going to go through the different types of saddles that you get out there and how you can find a saddle that will be suitable to you and give you the most comfort, take away that lower back pain, and give you the best possible pedal stroke that you can get, and which is the most comfortable. Obviously very important when looking at a saddle, it's always have something to measure, but if you see your local bike setup guy or whatever, they can also help you choose the best saddle for you. Just make sure it's not a saddle that they're trying to sell because they are associated with a certain brand. This is one of your typical saddles where you've got the spacing in between the saddle, and the main reason for this is a lot of people get a lot of pressure in the middle and it restricts blood flow to their. As you can see with this saddle, it has a proper good spacing in the middle, so ideally when you look at a saddle like this, it's really flat, it doesn't really have a half moon. Your sit bones would kind of be around about here. So it doesn't help taking this type of saddle and sitting here. You're going to get minimum support, your hips is going to rock and roll left to right, you're going to have no stability, and you're sure to get lower back pain, knee pain, and saddle sores, because look at that small area that you'll be able to sit on. So you have to make sure that both your sit bones sit here. So the question you're asking me here is, how do I make sure I'm sitting right on the saddle? Well, there's different ways you can measure the width of your sit bones. However, what I know what saddles have worked really well for me in the past, and I know their width. So I just take a tape measurement and I basically just measure the width of the saddle, and then I kind of would know if it's going to work for me. If you have no point of reference, you can always go sit on a type of cushion. You can always go sit somewhere and actually just feel where the pressure points of your sit bones are on a table, or if you have the necessary equipment, you can go to a local bike shop that actually have a type of layer which shows you where your sit bones is when you go sit on it. So that can really be quite helpful. This is really a nice and wide saddle. Like I say, you can see the point going down here. This is not important because ideally you want to sit here. And sometimes when I go into the drops and it's really hard, I shift a little bit forward on the saddle, and that's totally normal, don't panic, that's fine. You shift a little bit forward on the saddle just to get that bit more leverage, and because just remember, as soon as you go more down, your hip moves up a little bit. So where your hip bone is, when you're sitting straight up, your hip bone is about here, for example. As soon as you go down in the drops, that hip bone moves up, so it actually makes your seat higher, if you want to put it that way, but it can become really complicated. So one thing I just want to share with you guys is that you have to find a saddle that's going to be comfortable, most importantly, which gives you a lot of stability and prevents your hips from rocking and rolling. You get a lot of different types of saddle, and like I said, don't be too bothered with this part here because it's not important. This is just to finish off the design of the saddle. When choosing a saddle, you also have to make sure that the saddle will suit your riding capabilities. So what I mean by that is that when you choose a really super racing type of saddle, for example like this one, you have to remember it's going to be very hard. And if you're a recreational cyclist and you're not used to spending a lot of hours on the bike, have a really good setup and have a really good chamois or bib, and don't use chamois cream, you're going to get saddle sores very quickly because these saddles are really hard. So you might, if you just a cyclist that cycle about 2 or 3 times a week, you might opt for a softer type of saddle. But just remember, when you've got a soft saddle, for us it tends to move in a bit and it creates instability, which I personally don't like. But it can prevent you from getting saddle sores. And remember, if you get a saddle sore, it can cause you to be off the bike for around about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, sometimes even if you have to cut it out. You really need to pay attention on this. And I'm talking about this because we're going through all the small detail as we build up into the come out of the off season, and we want to better all the small things compared to last year. So we have to pay a lot of attention to detail in regards with all these small things, because the small thing can cause that you lose a lot of time on the bike, and especially you want to make the time that you have to, the little time that you have to ride as a cyclist, you want to make it count. So what I mean by that is, let's say for example you've got a month of good training ahead and it fits into your schedule, but after that month you back to work. You want to make sure that everything is perfect in that month and that you get in all your training, because the month after you're going to have to work. So if you're going to sit at home with a lot of problems trying to get your setup right during this base period with knee pain, or you started too quick, that month is going to pass really quick, and before you see again, you already have to go back to work or whatever, and you've lost all your form and time you had to put in the long hours. Hope this was informative. Once again, thanks to my camera girl here, Mandy, for helping me out this morning. We'll do a good amount of vlogs and keep you informed to the best of our abilities, obviously. Thanks, cheers, and goodbye.
And only in the dark do we see our sunlight. Home is where we were, home is where we want to be. And yes, we don't have time to say goodbye, and this ain't the last time. Now this time before we go, raise your hands, raise a toast. Time is something special, just like love before it starts to snow. It's crazy how the years have gone, memories of the drug we're on. But darling, just remember that there's never a goodbye. It's spoken, there's never a goodbye. So there's never